Welcome everyone to season 3 of Build and Grow Money Matters, a series dedicated to helping businesses go beyond financial management to achieve financial growth, resilience, and innovation. As businesses continue to revive and pivot to newer models in these tough times, Your Story is proud to partner with HSBC for another season of inspiring conversation, insights, and observations. We feature the newest trendsetters in business and stalwarts of the ecosystem to help businesses power their next phase of growth and business continuity. Joining us today, we have Taran Chhabra, founder of Neeman. Taran is a business analytics leader from New Jersey in the US. He has helped several pharma and life sciences giants in the US pivot their current operational strategy and move towards the path of growth. His zeal to question why comfort is undervalued and why natural materials were not chosen in the footwear industry led him to the path of creating Neemans. Welcome aboard, Taran.
Thanks, Madan. Appreciate you guys having me here.
My name is Madan, and on behalf of all of us at Your Story, welcome to our audience for joining us today. My first question to Taran is tell us a little bit about your backstory. How did you get to where you are today? How did you begin your growth? You're in a market where already people are familiar with giant brands like Nike and Reeboks. So, how did you start and how did you get customers to know about you and start buying your products?
I've worked in the US for about 10, 12 years, right? So I come from a core technology and business strategy background, right? So I watched the Indian ecosystem grow, evolve very closely from the US, right? So I was away from India for about 10, 12 years. But that didn't stop me from studying the Indian ecosystem, how brands were set up and how consumer companies were coming to life from 2016 onwards, right? And the idea from Neeman's sprung about from my own personal frustration. So this was a travel experience or a travel trip that we were taking back in 2016, right? We were taking a train trip, I still remember, from Madrid to Seville. And I had one suitcase full of shoes, right? I had a running shoe. I had a walking shoe. I was there for a few days of work, so I had a work shoe. I had an evening lounging shoe. And if anything happened to the 4 shoes, I had an extra shoe, right? So look at my travel experience, right? 5 different shoes, put in a suitcase, and and what happened during this whole experience was the suitcase was left aside, and I was trying to jungle around the train station in trying to buckle up and take the suitcase, right? And then I started wondering, right, post this travel experience, why couldn't there be one shoe designed for all day wear, right? Why aren't brands focused for crafting a different shoe for different activities, right? That's when I started conducting a lot of interviews back in the US, back in India, in trying to understand what's the core rationale for people to buy footwear, right? And I got several, reasoning like running, CrossFits, right, work. But the undervalued thing that I found was comfort, right? About 60 to 70% of the people kept telling me how, comfort was their core rationale to buy more than one pair. And that's when I figured out that this is a big problem to solve, and I started diving into it. So we spent 2 years to select some of the best materials out there, and we launched back in December 2018 to be precise, right? And when you ask about how we have spread the word, it's all about content, right? We are extremely unique in the materials that we use. So we started questioning as to why the whole footwear industry uses synthetic materials which are not good for the skin, which are not good for the environment, which emit close to 10% of the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, use a lot of water, and all use petroleum-based oils, right? So we started, now I come from a background wherein I look at nutrition behind every product I purchase, right? I'm the annoying guy who questions calories and what are the ingredients that go in. So it was very natural for me to look at the materials and then use materials which naturally exist in the environment, or materials which have lost their life. We bring it back in the form of recycled materials, and then we launch Neeman's.
Thanks, Taran. You mentioned that it's a great story how you came up with the idea of the product and the sourcing and so on. Now, you use sustainably sourced merino wool, castor bean oil, and recycled rubber for your shoes. So, are these materials coming from India? Is it possible to get some of these sustainable fibers from India itself, Taran?
It's been an evolution, right, Madan? What we've started is when we launched in 2018, And back in 2016, 2017, I still remember, reaching out to a bunch of manufacturers in India, right? Talking to them, trying to explain as to why these materials would be better. And nobody gave me a shot, right? Nobody even understood what these materials could do. And nobody was, willing to deep dive into a startup, right? Which is using materials which are typically not used in footwear. So back then, we kind of created the entire ecosystem on our own, right? We went to South Korea for a merino wool. Uh, we went to China for insoles and outsoles, right? So we did a lot of research in terms of the best country for the best material, right? And over the years, we have now built the ecosystem in India, right? I think within the last 12 to 16 months, we have now moved our entire manufacturing to India.
Thanks, Taran. The big question on everyone's minds these days is the COVID pandemic, of course. So, can you share with us how you've managed to weather this crisis? What were the unique, peculiar challenges you faced? And how are you maybe pivoting using new kinds of innovations, technologies? Taran?
For us, the pandemic hit us in a different way, right? We spent about a year in creating a product market fit, right? And reaching out to the right set of investors. And we raised capital in February last year, right? So it was February 2020, we closed a round and we were super excited with a bunch of new colors that we were launching in some of the styles, right? And we're sitting on a phenomenal month, and the country went in lockdown on March 20th. So we went to zero revenue like any other brands out there, right? So it wasn't different for us. But the good thing here was we had just raised capital, so we were sitting in good cash to to take the right decisions from then on. And what we started looking on is what could we do during these tough times, right? It was not the right time to push a footwear product. It was not the right time to push aggressive advertising. So we started fixing on some low hanging fruits in the business. We started looking at some technologies that we wanted to implement and were not able to implement because of time issues. So we brought in a few softwares and we started looking on newer product innovations, right? We started looking at a lot of research. The entire manufacturing industry took a hit. So we started talking to the biggest and the best of manufacturers all around India and started looking at some other materials that we could introduce. Right now, everybody was stuck at home, and wearing sneakers wasn't the norm. So we said, what could we do during these times? We introduced our first ever environment friendly slipper. We called it the Eco Flip and the Eco Slide. Now, slippers and sandals have been sold in India forever, but we added about 50% of recycled materials. We added natural oils, we added natural rubber, which is biodegradable, and we introduced a much better, a comfortable and an environment friendly slipper. And it was phenomenal, right? The response that we got from some of our existing customers was off the roof. And we also introduced organic cotton. Right now, cotton has been around for so long, been used in t-shirts, shirts forever. We said, how could we introduce a better version of cotton? And we introduced a recycled cotton sneaker, 100% made in India, with natural rubber sole, super comfortable materials. And we said, you're working from home, you're not going to step out, but you could use these shoes for workout at home. You could use these shoes uh, for if you're out for a walk. These are great shoes for walk. So we started looking at the trends of what the consumer is doing, and then we started creating products around it.
Thanks, Taran. You mentioned quite a few times the word organic in there, but even in many organic products, apparently chemicals are still used, right? So, how do you get that balance right where you use chemicals but still have the branding and the message and the promise of being organic and sustainable?
Right. So let's look at traditionally how footwear was sourced, right? Now, footwear, 60% of the footwear industry is leather, which comes from animal skin, right? And then there is synthetically sourced polyester, nylons of the world, which is again plastic, right? After its life, it ends up in oceans and in landfills. So what we are doing is we are polluting the environment in a very big way, and these materials are not good for the skin either. So what we've started to do is we've started to look at each and every component that's used in footwear, right? There is upper, there is insole, there is lining, there is an outsole. So footwear industry is in general, there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes in making a shoe. So what we've done is we've started to identify each and every material and then used a better version of that material, right? It's either natural, which is available within the nature, or it's recycled, right? It is something that we have to use. So what we have done is, instead of dumping it in the oceans, instead of dumping it in the landfills, we've brought it back and given it a new life. So what we are saying is, this is not 100% natural. No footwear in the world today is 100% natural. But what we're saying is, our footwear is better than what was created earlier. And we have reduced the amount of carbon dioxide that a typical shoe emits, right? So it's a better version of what existed. We're not 100% natural, like I said, but it's a journey. We're working towards it, and hopefully in the next few years we should be able to create a 100% sustainable product.
Thanks, Taran. We've talked about the product and the customers. Let's talk about investors now. Last year, you raised
Sure.
$1 million in a pre-Series A round led by Anicut Angel Fund, along with participation, I believe, from AngelList and other serial entrepreneurs. So tell us how difficult it was to maybe convince investors to invest in a sustainable footwear business, and maybe how did you utilize this round of funding, Taran?
Right. So now, footwear industry in India has, India is the second largest market in the world, right? And it again sells more footwear after China and United States of America, right? So there was never a doubt of how big the industry was in India. But something peculiar in India is there hasn't been any innovation in the last 2 decades, right? Neither in the supply chain, neither in the materials, neither in the way the products are being sold, right? So this was a challenge for us initially, right? Because the investors didn't have any brand to compare against, right? There's never been a startup that's come in, that's grew, and then led off the ranks, right? There have been leading public companies like the likes of Relaxo and a few other companies that have come in, have done well, but none within the price range that we were going after. And sustainability wasn't a norm, a few years ago. So we started taking, one step at a time. We knew that if we had approached investors with a product or with a deck, we're not going to get capital, right? So we said, let's put our savings on the line, right? If we believe in this concept, let's dive into it. I'd quit my job from the US, come here, built an entire team, started doing everything in-house. And post first 3 to 6 months, when we saw enough response from the customers, right? When we saw people liking the product, repeat purchases started coming in, we had the right metrics, to convince a set of investors that this is a great, market to go after, is when we started talking to, investors across the country. And we raised our first round of funding from some amazing set of angel investors, who believed in our journey, right? Who believed that, on what we were building, right? Firstly, all these investors were existing customers. So it wasn't hard for us to convince them on the product, right? I think everybody had tried our product, they had used it extensively, and they loved it, right? So there was no doubt about the product. We just had to convince them on how big the market is, what's our journey going to be, right? How we're going to evolve and how we're going to build a big, sustainable global footwear brand coming out of India. So it took about 3 to 6 months of pitching. And then Anicut Angel Fund, like you said, we were the first investment from them. This is the first investment from that angel fund. So it was amazing for them to deep dive and have us as their first investment.
Thanks, Taran. That's a very inspiring story coming back from the US, finding out a good vision for not just a business, but for an environmentally sustainable product. Tell us a bit more about the international scope of your business. I believe your wool comes from Australia, the design is in the UK, the fabric creation is in South Korea, some assemblies in China, and the sales are in India. Would it be possible to do all of this within India itself in one location, Taran?
It is. So what we're doing is, like I said, now we have moved our entire manufacturing process to India, right? Because when we call ourselves a sustainable footwear brand, something that was extremely important for us is to reduce the carbon footprint. And if the product travels to less locations, right, then it becomes more sustainable. And plus the entire supply chain functions, a lot more robust if it is located in a close proximity. So now what we've done is we have found out, the right manufacturers in India, the right assembly guys in India. And now we are, like I said, we are making our slippers 100% in India. We're making our wool shoes in India. We're making our cotton sneakers in India. So we're building the entire supply chain in India, right? Along with our growth, what we're doing is we are enabling all these manufacturers to use better materials, right? We're kind of educating them on why these materials are better for the customer, for the manufacturer, and for the environment as well. So it's a win-win, right? And in terms of Neeman's being a global play, all right, we never had a doubt that the whole market that we're going after, the product that we're building, is a product for the international market, right? We started with the Indian ecosystem to start small and then to spread our wings, right? And now we are already identifying a lot of markets, for example, US, Australia, a few sections in the UK, and looking to do a few pilots up there, right? Because the product is there, the entire supply chain is created, and now we're looking at expanding to different markets around the world.
Thanks, Taran. Let's go back to some of your future plans that you mentioned earlier. The pandemic has changed, obviously, a lot of your product and business plans. You had plans, I believe, to come to New Delhi, to Bangalore, and to Mumbai, but the pandemic has halted some of these plans. Are you looking at revisiting these plans and expanding to these cities again, Taran?
So not at this point. I think we've kept our thoughts evolving, right? And as entrepreneurs, right, as business owners, I think look at the current situation and then planning, swiftly is something that is extremely critical for us. Like when we had launched, we were looking at going offline very quickly, right? Because footwear in India is touch and feel, right? And the retail ecosystem is very big, and D2C in India was about 7 to 8%. So we said, let's look at creating a few experience zones across the country back then. But now with the amount of penetration that we've been able to do digitally, we've kind of pushed that plans for some time, right? Because COVID has accelerated how people shop, right? Now people are more comfortable sitting at home, trying the product. So we've said, why can't we do, be digital and give this experience for customers just being home. So we've pushed the retail plans. It's always on the cards for us, right? But it's at least 24 months away for now. Our plans is to be aggressive on being omnipresent, right? To create that kind of experience when the person is home. We've given a no questions asked return and refund policy, right? You don't like the product, wear it for 7 days, 14 days, you use it however you want to. If you feel this is not the right product, we'll take it back, right? Unlimited exchanges, unlimited times. We'll go ahead and we'll start that. We'll keep delivering to you until you find the perfect size. So all of these things have reduced the apprehension in the consumer's mind, right? And have ensured they sit at home and then try the product. So we feel there's enough scale that is available just by being D2C in India in the current times. And once the retail starts coming back up, right? Once start people, actually they start going out and exploring shopping malls, would be the time we would look at, opening our stores across Delhi, Bangalore, and even Mumbai for that matter.
Thanks, Taran. Speaking of India opening up, you also have launched, I believe, a recent brand with Made in India sneakers. Tell us a little bit more about this brand and how it differs from some of your other products.
So the brand is the same, right? All the products that we have come under Neeman's ecosystem. Right? So basically what we've done is, like I said, a bigger criteria for us was to build sustainable supply chain within the footwear ecosystem in India. So as and when we started looking at product innovations, material innovations, right? And we started looking at specific pain points that we wanted to resolve for our customers in India, we started looking at suppliers within India. So earlier this year, we've introduced a made in India, sustainable slipper, which is called Eco Flip. We've also introduced a made in India Eco Slide, right? All these, both these categories are 100% made in India, made with natural rubber, 30 to 40% recycled materials, recycled compounds, natural oils, and so on. And the second material innovation post merino wool for us has been cotton. We blended cotton with recycled materials. We have added our proprietary merino wool, which comes from Australia, all along the insole, and we've added a natural rubber sole. So these two products for us have started doing very well and are 100% made in India.
Now, Taran, you've had a lot of international exposure. Can you share with us maybe what you think are some differences between, say, the US market and the India market, and what it means for opportunities for a brand like yours?
Now, the ecosystem in America is a lot bigger, right? Even though we as in India are an extremely big market. our market is a little smaller when we compare upwards of premium and luxury, right? Our market is more towards the economy segment. And when you look at international markets like the US or Europe, right, the penetration and the cost sensitivity is a lot lesser. So that means for brands like us, there's more room for expansion, right? And sustainability over there is extremely big in terms of the consumer, right? You don't have to educate them on what sustainability is, right? They've already made choices for better materials. They already know why recycled materials are better for the environment, right? Why they've chosen less of plastic. So this, it's already imbibed in an international customer, right? So for brands like us, it's a lot easy to expand up in international markets. Whereas in India, I think the market for sustainability is still building, right? It's a work in progress. COVID in a way has accelerated the whole thought process, because now we are looking at natural fibers for our skin, right? If you look at the amount of growth that the wellness category has had, completely highlights how the thought process of people have shifted, right? They're no longer going after brands just because a huge celebrity is backing them, right? They're looking at the story, they're looking at where the products are made, they're looking at why the brand had started, what kind of you know uh, benefit is the product going to have on their body, right? So I think India is moving towards it, and I say this to our team a lot, right? This is new age India. So this is willing to back newer brands. This is willing to try new products. Who could have thought that a Greek yogurt company would come in 2017 like Epigamia and do so well in India, right? And so I think the trends are changing in India, and now we are uh, moving towards a lot bigger market, especially with the high rising incomes in India.
Thanks, Taran, for pointing out those other trends from other industries as well. We
Sure.
mentioned sustainability many times today. Can you share with us what do you think about sustainability as a future trend? Will it be a niche? Will it be a major force? What are some of your positioning in this trend? Where will you be in maybe 2 to 4 years in this sustainability mission, Taran?
So I think the way people are looking at sustainability, right? People are looking at sustainability as a trend, right? People are looking at sustainability as a way for brands to, market their products, right? But I feel sustainability is the future, right? Sustainability is here to stay, right? There are finite amount of resources available in our environment. So if we keep abusing them, there's going to be a point where these resources will go away, right? So that's where brands like us have started looking at materials that are naturally available within the atmosphere, that are renewable in nature, right? They come in and they keep growing by themselves. So I think bigger brands have already started to take notice, right? And they've started to adapt to sustainability in the next 2 to 3 years. Now I keep reading about bigger apparel brands predicting that by 2025, every product of theirs would be sustainable in nature. Now, sustainability doesn't mean 100% natural. Sustainability doesn't mean 100% chemical free. What we got to understand is, in the case of manufacturing, in the case of product building, there is going to be some amount of chemical that's going to be involved. But how could we reduce that amount of chemical that's being consumed? How could we use materials that are better for the environment is what is going to be differentiated in the years to come. So I feel in the years to come, a bigger thought process that's going to be in the consumer's mindset is, why should I buy this product, right? Is it not only good for me, is it good for the environment, right? I think customer is not going to be paying a premium for sustainable products. That's where brands like us have to work on making these products more and more affordable. And the day we make them affordable and comparable to synthetic products is the day the adoption of these products would go a lot higher. So the positioning for Neeman's is, one, we are an exceptionally comfortable sneaker, right? Make no mistake, we just don't say buy a product because it is 100% sustainable. No, we say you would have never worn a sneaker like this before. You would have never worn a slipper like this before. So our first positioning is comfort. And then we say we have innovated the entire supply chain. These were the materials that existed before. These are the materials that we brought in now, right? Who could have imagined that you could wear a sneaker without a sock? We did that. So Neeman's is India's first sock-free shoe. Who could have imagined wearing a sneaker in summer and in winter? Our shoes are temperature regulating. They adapt to your skin and outside environment. So what our merino wool shoes do is they keep you cool in summers and they keep you warm in winters. So that's the composition that we've created, right? They are breathable. They are 50,000 times stronger than any other material that exists today. And plus they are flexible, right? So all these propositions as core value give us the biggest of edge, right? That's where a consumer is feeling good about the purchase with us. So first ever, he says, whenever a customer buys a product, he says, I've never worn a shoe like this before, right? To name even Harsh Mariwala from Marico Group, right? He's tweeted on Twitter on a public platform saying he's never worn a more comfortable sneaker than Neeman's, right? So that's amazing for us, right? So that's, he's not said this is the most sustainable sneaker, because when you talk about it, you're not going to say that. You're first going to talk about how the product has changed your life. So we say this product will fit in your life. It'll improve what you were wearing before, right? It's 100 steps ahead of anything that you have owned before. So I think that's the first core value proposition for us when we look at introducing any natural fiber. And then whole carbon footprint, environment benefit, that's what we stand for anyways.
Thanks, Taran. It's so great to hear about the power of your message and the kind of validation you're getting from the industry also. My last two questions for you are about your relationship with money. Since this show
Sure.
is Money Matters, my question for you is, what is your relationship with money? What's your preference? A huge corpus for retirement or a consistent, healthy return on investments? Taran?
So the relationship with money has kind of been strange over the years, right? Like I said, I've gone from the time wherein I was making about $300,000 a year to moving to India and working towards creating a brand or creating building a thought process that never existed in India, right? So it was a downward trend initially to begin with, right? But it's the vision that I was going after, right? It's the journey that I was trying to take, and looking at not looking at immediate monetary benefit. So I'm a guy who looks at healthy returns on an ongoing basis, right? So I think that's how I look at money and all my investments over a period of time.
Thanks, Taran. So, what has been your experience with working with lenders and banks? As an entrepreneur, what has been your experience? What are your expectations? And what are your tips to the audience on how to deal with lenders, investors, banks, and so on? Taran?
So I think every uh, lenders are different, banks are different, investors are different, right? So the thought process has to completely change on who you're working with. Now, back then, when we were looking at raising capital from banks in India, it was extremely difficult, right? Because a few years ago, if you had to raise loans from banks, one, you had to be profitable, right? So for me, the underlying question that I kept asking myself is asking the banks is, how do you expect a startup to be profitable in 6 months or 8 months down the road when you know you're making a long-term investment, right? So I couldn't understand the whole thesis of how banks operated, and banks are a little reserved in a way how they look at loans. So I think going after investors or going after angel investors who know you, who believe in what you're building is the right way to go, at least in the first couple of years, right? And as and when the first investment comes in, then a lot more doors open, right? There are lots of capital that's available via revenue share, right, via lending, via NBFCs, and then banks also come into the picture if you have been if you have registered for over 2 years and if you're making steady revenue. So I think it's channeling each and every source depending on the time frame of your business.
Thanks so much, Taran, for this very engaging conversation. I think three takeaways from me and for our audience are sourcing, style, sustainability, the three S's. Sourcing, take a look at the global and local advantages of sourcing different kinds of products and skills from different parts of the world. Focus on style as well as the substance of the product, the message, the impact it has on the lives of your customers, and sustainability. Try and be as sustainable as you can in every sense of the word. Thank you so much, Taran. I wish you all the best in your journey ahead. Thank you, Taran.
Thank you, Madan. Appreciate it.